My wife's divorced friends talked her into faking an affair to test my loyalty, so I served her divorce papers and left them all speechless. Hey everyone. Before we kick off today's video, I've got a favor to ask. We've noticed our channel isn't getting as much love lately, and subscribing is one of the easiest ways you can help us out. It's quick, free, and it means we can keep bringing you awesome content. Your support really means a lot, so let's work together to keep this channel growing. Thanks a bunch. Now, let's dive into the video. Okay, so I've been hitched to Sarah for about 8 years now. Our marriage has been pretty solid, not perfect, but definitely not bad either. We both have full-time gigs, and we've fallen into a routine with our weekly plans. We even squeeze in a date night like once a month, assuming we're not totally wiped out from work. I thought we were cruising along just fine. We might not be in that honeymoon phase anymore, but we're comfortable with each other, you know? It's not like we need to be glued to each other's side every minute. Then out of nowhere, Sarah's chatting with her divorced buddies about our marriage, and they're filling her head with all sorts of nonsense. They're saying I'm not attentive enough or romantic enough, and that she needs to make me fight for her or some crazy stuff like that. I only found out after all this was already in motion, which made it feel even worse. While I'm here, freaking out and thinking she's seeing someone else, turns out she's been brewing up this elaborate plot with her, perhaps, embittered friends who apparently can't handle someone else having a decent relationship. It all started about 6 weeks ago when Sarah began acting totally different, like, really different. Suddenly, she was having late nights at work way more often and coming home with this guilty but excited vibe. I'd ask about her day, and she'd get all evasive and change the subject. She started dressing up more for work, taking forever to get ready, and wearing perfume she never used to put on for the office. Initially, I thought maybe she was planning a surprise for me or something since our anniversary was a few months down the line. Then she began getting texts at weird hours, and I'd notice her quickly grabbing her phone or flipping it over. If I asked who was texting, she'd say it was work stuff or her sister, but she'd act all flustered and defensive. I remember one night, she rolled in at almost midnight, claiming she was out with the girls. But she smelled like men's cologne, and her lipstick was smudged. When I asked about it, she said she must have hugged someone goodbye but couldn't look me in the eye. I'm not clueless, I can tell when someone's been up to something. I started to keep an eye out, and things just weren't adding up. She'd take calls in another room and hang up as soon as I came in. She was doing laundry more frequently and acting weirdly secretive about it, like she didn't want me to see certain clothes. And she started showering immediately after getting home from work, which was new. What really bugged me was this new guy at her office, Jake. She kept talking about how funny he was and that he'd helped her with a project. But then she'd catch herself and change topics. When I pried a bit more about him, she'd get all weird. Yet, she already shared all these personal details, like his motorcycle, his recent divorce, and his interest in rock climbing, stuff you wouldn't typically know about a so-called just a coworker. I tried to talk to her about how distant she'd become, but she brushed it off, saying I was paranoid and she was just stressed about work. But the more space I gave her, the worse it seemed to get. It was obvious something was up. I'm not one to play ostrich and pretend everything's peachy when it's not. The bomb really dropped about 2 weeks ago. She told me she was having dinner with her sister, but I ran into her sister at the grocery store. When I mentioned Sarah was meant to be with her, her sister looked totally confused and said they hadn't planned anything. That's when it hit me, she was lying and likely meeting up with Jake. I confronted her that night, flat out asking if she was cheating. She flipped out, started crying, claiming she loved me and would never cheat. But she couldn't explain why she lied about where she was. When someone can't give a straight answer to something that's simple, they're definitely hiding something big. That night turned into one long, sleepless mess as I replayed every sign and every lie, realizing I couldn't keep going on wondering if my wife was loyal or not. I needed the truth or a way out of this limbo. I considered hiring a private investigator to get some solid proof before making any drastic moves. I was even researching divorce lawyers, prepping myself for the worst-case scenario where I'd have to start my life over because of some dude from her office who rides a motorcycle. But then, last Tuesday, everything flipped, though in the worst way possible. Sarah's friend Lisa called me, totally drunk and rambling. She was going on about how proud she was of Sarah for following their advice, making me jealous, and how it was working because I was finally paying attention again. I was like, what are you even talking about? That's when the whole wild story came out. Sarah and her divorced pals, Lisa, Monica, and Jennifer, had cooked up this whole fake affair scheme to get me to be more attentive and romantic. They convinced Sarah that the best way to make a man appreciate what he has is to make him think he might lose it, which is the most twisted idea I've ever heard. Lisa spilled that they helped Sarah dream up all these details about Jake. Turns out, Jake's real, but Sarah's barely talked to him beyond work stuff. They coached her on how to act shady to make me think she was cheating. And they thought it was hilarious that their plan was working, with me acting like some jealous husband. I hung up on Lisa and just sat there for an eternity, trying to wrap my head around it all. I went through every emotion imaginable. First relief, thankfully she wasn't actually cheating, but then utter confusion about why someone would put their spouse through this. Anger took over as I realized my wife had been putting me through the emotional ringer for weeks. So, get this. For weeks, Sarah had been playing mind games with me, and it was all on purpose. One night, when she got back home, I broke the news that her pal Lisa had spilled the beans. I swear, her face went white as a ghost. She started crying and saying sorry, babbling about how it was just a dumb joke that got way out of hand and that she was planning to come clean soon. But man, I was livid. I could barely get the words out. I told her that pretending to cheat isn't a joke at all, it's straight up emotional abuse. Sarah went on about how her friends convinced her that our marriage was getting boring and that I was taking her for granted. Apparently, all she wanted was for me to shower her with more love and attention. And guess what? It worked. I had been more affectionate. But not because of some clever plan, because I genuinely thought I was losing her. Hearing this just made my blood boil even more. She could have just talked to me about feeling unappreciated, but no, she opted to make me believe she was stepping out on me, watching me suffer day in and day out. And there she was, apologizing over and over, calling it a mistake. But that's the thing, I don't think a lot of people get it. It wasn't just a silly mistake or a bad joke. It was totally calculated to mess with my heart and my head. Sarah watched me get all suspicious and anxious, knowing full well why I felt that way, because she made it that way on purpose. As I reflected more on it, I got angrier, realizing how every time I tried to talk to her about her acting distant, she'd make me feel like I was the one being paranoid. Questioning her missing time and these sketchy texts made me look like some green-eyed monster, while the whole time she knew that's exactly how she wanted me to feel. And her friends found this entertaining. They were probably laughing behind my back, watching me squirm and second-guess everything about our marriage. Sarah was in on the joke, and I was the punchline. I told her I needed some space to think, but honestly, I knew I couldn't stick around. I tossed my stuff into bags and boxes, not sure how long I'd be gone. After dropping most of it at storage, I crashed with my brother. All I could think about was whether I could ever trust her again. I mean, if she could lie like that and watch me go through hell, thinking it was okay because her friends said so, what else might she do? My family and some friends were saying I was blowing it out of proportion, suggesting I forgive her since she didn't actually cheat, just wanted attention. But they didn't live those weeks I did, believing Sarah was betraying me. Cheating or not, pretending to cheat hits just the same. Those nights I lay awake, picturing her with some fictitious guy, wondering where I went wrong, it was all for nothing. And that whole time, I was planning how to split our things, where to live, and how to tell people about the breakup, all because someone who's supposed to love me made me go through that. Luckily, the logistics were simple, since we rented, and the lease was in her name, it was a no-brainer that I had to move out. After crashing at my brother's for a few days, I made up my mind and lawyered up. Even the lawyer was taken aback, saying it was one heck of a story, but definitely grounds for divorce. Sarah had shattered the respect in our marriage. When I told her, she lost it, begging and promising never to make that mistake again, as if that made it okay. But torturing your spouse for laughs? That's a lesson you shouldn't need to learn as an adult. And then there were her friends, Lisa and Monica, acting like I was the sensitive one. They called it a harmless prank, but I told them they were more twisted than I'd imagined, breaking down my marriage for kicks because they couldn't stand seeing others happy. Lisa tried saying they were just helping Sarah get what she needed, but seriously, if there was a problem, Sarah should have talked to me, not pulled off some twisted charade. What really burns me is that Sarah still doesn't get why it's so wrong. She keeps saying it was all fake, like that makes it okay. But the pain it caused me was real, just as if she had cheated for real. In some ways, that she did it on purpose made it even worse. I've been staying with my family ever since, trying to piece things together. I've been crashing at my brother's place for the last 2 weeks now, and Sarah's been blowing up my phone, begging me to come back and talk it out. She even sent this long email, saying she knows she messed up and wants to hit up marriage counseling to try and rebuild our trust. But honestly, I'm not buying it. Trust isn't the kind of thing you can just snap back together, especially after something like this. How can I be sure she won't play some twisted game again just because one of her pals gave her some dumb advice? Everyone keeps asking if I'm really going to throw away 8 years of marriage over this one thing. But it's not just one slip-up. It was weeks of her plotting and playing me. It's like waking up to find out your wife doesn't care enough not to toss you into emotional chaos just to see you scramble for her attention. Divorce papers were just served yesterday, and Sarah called, sobbing and begging me to think it over. She even promised to cut off Lisa, Monica, and Jennifer, saying she'd do whatever to win back my trust. But I told her it's not about her friends. It's about how she thought their plan was ever a good idea. Some folks think I'm being too harsh and should give her a second chance. But I keep flashing back to those weeks when I couldn't eat or sleep because I was terrified of losing her. And knowing she sat there, watched me fall apart, and let it all happen? I can't shake that. Maybe if she'd come clean after a few days and said it was all fake, things might have been different. But she let it drag on for weeks and was willing to keep it going even longer. Lisa only spilled the beans because she got drunk, and that tells me everything about the kind of person Sarah is. So yeah, that's where I'm at, full-on divorce mode, and everyone thinks I'm nuts for leaving over this so-called harmless prank. But it wasn't harmless, and it was way more than a prank. It was a betrayal of everything marriage should be. I refuse to spend the rest of my life wondering when she'll decide to test me again. Am I the jerk for divorcing her over this? Because everyone's making me feel like I'm the one losing it. Update 1. Wow, I did not expect this to blow up. Going through all your comments and messages has been both a relief and a bit overwhelming, knowing that so many people get why this is such a big deal for me. A lot of you were asking for more details on what Sarah did during those weeks and how her friends were in on it, so here goes. Sarah's buddy circle includes Lisa, who got divorced after her husband cheated with his secretary 2 years ago, Monica, who's been divorced twice and is now dating a dude she complains about nonstop, and Jennifer, who recently finalized her divorce. They get together every Thursday for what's supposed to be wine night, but it's just a bash men fest. I used to think it was harmless and encouraged Sarah to go because she seemed to enjoy it. But now I see these women were filling her head with garbage, saying I was too comfy in our marriage and didn't appreciate her, that she needed to shake things up to make me realize what I could lose. So, here's the rundown. Sarah started working out more and buying new clothes. When I said she looked great, she'd act all mysterious, making me think she was glamming up for someone else. She also started nitpicking me more than ever before, from my work outfits to why I didn't plan surprise dates anymore. I chalked it up to a midlife crisis or something, but nah, she was just following a playbook her friends cooked up to make me feel insecure. The texts and calls were all a hoax too. Lisa and Monica would text her randomly and call her at night so she could act all shady. They even did some digging on this Jake dude at her work to drop realistic details in conversations, like his motorcycle or hobbies. And get this, they had this whole timeline mapped out on how things were supposed to escalate over 2 or 3 months. Phase 1 was acting distant. Phase 2 was fake texts and late-night work excuses. Phase 3 involved staying out late, acting like she was with someone else. Thank goodness Lisa got wasted and spilled the beans before phases 3 and 4, where she'd disappear for nights. I'm not sure how I would have coped thinking she was with another guy. Sarah admitted they'd been snapping photos and videos of her, documenting my misery and how their plan was working. They found it hilarious that I was bringing her flowers and planning dates to save our marriage. Honestly, that's the most messed up part, turning my pain into their entertainment. And Sarah was not only cool with all of this but was feeding them updates on how I was reacting to each lie. Lots of you asked if Sarah seemed to enjoy it or was conflicted. Looking back, I think she got a rush from the control and power. She seemed more alive and excited during those weeks than she had in years, which I thought was because she was falling for someone else. But now I know she was just in on this twisted game. So, there was a time when I thought Sarah might be involved with someone else. But now, I realize she was just getting a kick out of messing with my head. She'd come back from work with this sly grin, watching me play detective trying to figure out what was different about her. I'd ask a bunch of questions, and she'd toss me just enough tidbits to keep me on edge but never enough to actually calm me down. It was like she got a real laugh out of how on edge I was all the time. I later found out her friends were actually giving her tips on how to gaslight me. For instance, when I called her out on lying about being with her sister, her friends coached her to twist it around, making me feel guilty for not trusting her and making me seem paranoid and controlling. And when I tried to talk about the distance I was feeling between us, they told her to make me look clingy and needy, insisting I should give her space. It felt like a whole psychological battle designed to make me doubt my own mind. Learning more about this just made me angrier and more certain that filing for divorce was the right call. This wasn't some innocent joke gone wrong, this was a full-on plan to emotionally mess with me for their amusement. Sarah's been leaving voicemails every day, begging for another chance and saying she'll ditch her friends and do whatever it takes to fix things. But the damage is done, and I don't think there's any coming back from this. Her family, including her sister, has been calling too, asking me to forgive her and saying everyone makes mistakes. But this wasn't just a mistake. It was a choice she made repeatedly over 6 weeks, with plenty of chances to come clean, but she didn't. Her sister even had the nerve to call me cruel for not talking to Sarah about sorting things out. I told her the real cruelty was watching me suffer while knowing exactly why and enjoying it. Moving forward with the divorce feels right, especially as I uncover how calculated this whole thing was, because I realize the woman I thought I married doesn't exist. People have asked if I'm scared of regretting this decision, but honestly, I feel like I'm finally seeing things clearly. I deserve better than someone who'd pull something like this. And now, things have taken another crazy turn. Sarah's claiming that this whole fake affair mess is my fault because I wasn't giving her enough attention. She sent this long text saying how she'd been dropping hints for months needing more romance and attention, and since I wasn't getting the hints, she felt she had to do something drastic. She even said, "You forced me to fake an affair," which is wild. According to her, this wasn't a prank but a serious attempt to communicate after I missed all her subtle signals. My lawyer just shook his head, saying he'd never seen someone dig a deeper hole, as now she's justifying what she did and blaming me. But wait, it gets crazier. Sarah's been talking to her friends and coworkers, spinning this story that I'm divorcing her over playful flirting to spice things up, making me sound like a jealous, overreacting husband. My buddy Dave works with her, and he was baffled, asking me what was really going on. When I set the record straight, he was shocked, realizing Sarah was painting a very different picture. I've got to protect myself from her trying to rewrite history, so I saved all her voicemails where she's apologizing and admitting it was all fake, knowing I'll need proof of what really happened. Lisa, one of her friends, tried to backtrack, calling me to say they didn't think it was that bad and urging me to give Sarah another chance. But she only spilled more details, revealing they'd been planning this for months, researching ways to make men jealous and thinking this fake affair was the best way to get me to step up in our marriage. They even had a group chat for updates and celebrating their success in making me anxious or attentive. So, they called this whole mess Project Wake Up Call, which honestly makes me want to gag. But the real kicker? Lisa told me they were actually bummed it took me so long to confront Sarah about the cheating deal. They thought I'd go all jealous husband mode way earlier. Apparently, they started believing I was too chill about Sarah to fight for her. So not only did they mess with me for 6 whole weeks, but they also graded my reactions like I was some kind of bad husband. Like seriously, they were sitting there wondering if I'd get dramatic enough to make their twisted little game worth it. It was like they had me performing in a reality TV show without my knowledge. Lisa even spilled that Monica thought they should take it up a notch and have Sarah go on a faux date with some random dude just to see if I'd lose it. Thankfully, they figured that was too risky because I might have hired a PI or exposed their sick little experiment somehow. The fact that they even entertained that thought shows me they have zero boundaries or decency. They would have just kept pushing until I completely lost it, had their plan not been nixed by their own idiocy. Turns out, Sarah's parents had an inkling something was up because she asked them for tips on how to make me more romantic and attentive, claiming she wanted to shake up our routine with some surprises. They had no clue she was plotting this fake affair stunt. When they found out the truth after I filed for divorce, they freaked out and told Sarah that what she'd pulled was outrageous. But they're still trying to get me to give her another shot because they don't want to see her marriage fall apart over this. Her dad even called me yesterday, saying he gets why I'm mad but thinks I'm overreacting with the divorce thing. I was like, dude, what she did was extreme, and my reaction matches the chaos she caused. I told him if a stranger had done this to me, he'd probably expect me to press charges. Just because it was his daughter doesn't make it any less twisted. He didn't really have a comeback for that. I think he's finally starting to see this isn't just some minor tiff that a few counseling sessions and apologies can fix. The divorce is moving along, and my lawyer says we should wrap it up pretty quickly since we don't have kids or complicated finances. Honestly, I just want it done so I can start piecing my life back together and not deal with Sarah spinning the story her way. I'm planning to move to a different part of town once the divorce is final. I don't want to risk bumping into Sarah or her friends at the grocery store or gym. Plus, a fresh start in a new neighborhood sounds like the perfect way to put this nightmare behind me. Some people have asked if I miss Sarah or if I'm rethinking the divorce. Honestly, I miss who I thought she was, not who she turned out to be. And honestly, I feel relieved I found out what she was capable of before we had kids or bought a house or made any other huge commitments. I keep thinking about what could have happened if Lisa hadn't blabbed after drinking too much and how long Sarah would have let me think she was cheating. The person I thought I married would never have been able to watch me suffer and not say anything. But the real Sarah? She watched me lose weight, lose sleep, and walk around stressed and did nothing. In fact, she seemed to be enjoying it and was updating her friends on how their plan was unfolding. That's not someone I want to be married to, and it's definitely not someone I can trust again. I'm done feeling guilty about protecting myself from someone who clearly doesn't have my best interests at heart. Oh, and update 3. I thought I was done sharing updates, but something wild happened yesterday that I can't even keep to myself because it feels like a bad soap opera. With the divorce on track to be finalized next week, I thought the drama was winding down aside from Sarah's occasional pleas for me to reconsider. But then her friends decided they needed to step in one more time to fix the mess they'd started. Monica called me up yesterday, saying she wanted to chat about Sarah and see if we could work things out. Against my better judgment, my curiosity got the better of me, and I agreed to meet her for coffee. So there we were, at the coffee shop, and Monica starts with this big apology for her role in the fake affair mess, admitting they went too far. For a moment, I thought maybe she was ready to own up to their nonsense. But then, she threw a curveball, claiming she had a confession that might change my mind about the divorce. She got all serious and dramatic, like she was about to drop some huge, revealing bombshell. And what she said next was so ridiculous, I actually started laughing. Monica claimed the whole fake affair was cooked up because Sarah thought I was the one cheating. She said Sarah was suspicious because I'd been working late, changed my phone password, and started hitting the gym more. According to Monica, they'd wanted to test my loyalty by making me jealous. If I was cheating, I'd supposedly not care if Sarah seemed to be cheating. If I was faithful, I'd fight for us, proving I still loved her. I just stared at her because it was such obvious nonsense. Then, I asked why Sarah never mentioned suspecting me. So here's the deal. We were chatting about the divorce, and I was wondering why Sarah never mentioned any of her concerns when she was apologizing and begging me to take her back. Monica got all flustered and claimed Sarah was embarrassed and didn't want to accuse me of cheating without proof, so she kept quiet and just chatted with her friends for advice. But let's be real, I know this is all nonsense. Sarah had no reason to be suspicious. I've never cheated in my life. The so-called red flags Monica talked about were just normal stuff. I work late sometimes because of deadlines, I changed my phone password because of a new phone, and I hit the gym more since my doctor said I needed more exercise. Nothing suspicious there. Sarah never mentioned these things, so I know Monica's just trying to twist the story to make Sarah look like the victim. I called Monica out on it, saying it seemed like she was rewriting history, and she got all defensive, claiming that even if Sarah's suspicions were wrong, their little scheme made me more attentive. I told her the marriage would have been better if Sarah had just talked to me instead of scheming with her friends. I left, telling Monica to lose my number, and said the only person I wanted to hear from was my lawyer. As I drove away, I was just blown away by the ridiculousness of their lies, from prank to forced her to do it, to loyalty test. It was like watching experts in deflection and gaslighting. But now, I'm done being their joke. I'm finally free. Update 4, it's finally over. After 8 long, dragged-out months, the divorce is final. It was like a daily test of my sanity, but I made it through. Last time, Monica tried to sell me that loyalty test garbage, which I thought was peak nonsense, but nope, it kept going. Sarah shifted to this odd mix of victim playing and sending cold, formal emails through her lawyer. 1 minute, she's telling friends I abandoned her, the next, her lawyer's demanding a fondue pot we got as a wedding gift. Her parents kept trying to mediate, basically asking me to forgive and forget because marriage is hard. I told her dad, sure, marriage is hard, but what Sarah did wasn't marriage, it was a sick game. That seemed to get through because they backed off. For the last mediation, Sarah brought Jennifer for support, Jennifer, one of the masterminds behind their little plan. I refused to speak with her in the room, the mediator had to ask her to leave. Sarah acted like I'd committed a crime. You can't make this stuff up. When the papers were finalized, it was weirdly anticlimactic. I'm still crashing at my brother's but looking for my own place. I needed some space away from the house we shared. I know I did the right thing, but it's tough to wrap my head around being divorced at 36 because my wife and her friends thought emotional abuse was a fun twist for our marriage. It's been crazy, but I'm glad it's finally behind me.